Hello. So we are going to be getting started very, very soon. The speaker is just getting us a station together. So if you want to start taking a seat, if you manage to get a chair or find a lovely place to stand and start to congregate, we'll be getting started very soon. I want to let you know real quick, there is a sign-up sheet on the table. It's something called Lightning Talks. You put your name on that, and at the end, I'll call your name out, and you get a minute to talk about whatever project you're working on. But I'll cut you off after a minute. All right, we're getting started real soon. Please take your seats and get ready.
Somebody put a beer there. It wasn't me.
Not right now. What did Travis say? Did he say we're going to start in a minute?
All right. Hi, everybody. Oh, we got quiet real fast. Excellent. Welcome to the San Francisco Bitcoin Meetup group. I did want to just start off real quick by saying thank you to Galvanize for the space. Round of applause. I think we have helpers around here. They've been a huge help getting all this together. And I'd be remiss, of course, without mentioning our sponsors. They paid for all the wonderful food and beer you're drinking right now. So we have Waxman PR. They do Bitcoin PR out of the East Coast. It's a really great company. CoinSource is a Bitcoin ATM company. And they actually have 2 Bitcoin ATMs in San Francisco. Lisk just joined. They are a JavaScript-based DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. They use sidechains, very clever. I'd recommend looking it up. And of course, KeepKey, which I think a lot of people here would recognize. They do hardware wallets. But we're all here to hear Zooko and hear about ZCash. So I'm not going to delay you. We'll just go straight into it. Everyone, please, a big round of applause for Zooko.
Okay, so I can talk into this and I can hold it.
Yeah, should come up.
Hello. Thank you all for being here. It's really exciting. Look, this countdown timer is getting really small. And so we've all been really, really busy and excited. And so I deliberately came here without a presentation because I figured a lot of you would already know a lot of what I would put into any presentation. So instead I plan to try to figure out what you already know or what you're most interested in hearing about. And let's see. An important point of order is that there's a whole bunch of people from the ZCash company who came here tonight, and they all have permission to wave their hands and shout if I say something untrue. And this actually happens in practice, so don't be surprised. The rest of you have permission to like raise your hand and wait if I say something untrue, and then we can organize it. I'm gonna, 7 o'clock, when should we stop? It's 7:13. How long do we want to sit here talking before we go on to the next step? I figure, what were we in for? It said it ends at 9 on the website? Who's in charge here? All right, fine. Nobody's in charge, so I'm going to keep talking and asking you things until people start leaving.
What? I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
What? You just tweeted like a whole bunch of hand-drawn numbers.
That's a great question.
What the heck was that?
All right. Okay, so point of order. People can ask questions, and people who actually really know the technical details can interrupt me and tell me if I say something incorrect. And the first question is, what were all those hand-drawn numbers? Okay, that reminds me, thanks. There is another point of order, which is, did anyone happen to bring a DVD reading device to the meetup? They don't have those anymore, do they? Nobody brought your old laptop or? All right, well, okay, so yeah. I have some special DVDs in here that I wanted people to copy tonight, but I guess we'll have to figure out some other way to do this part. Okay, so I'm going to first explain the very basic facts about what Zcash is for all the people who showed up without knowing that, and why Zcash exists for like 5 minutes or less. And then I'll try to answer your question. The very basic facts about what Zcash is that Bitcoin is a shared ledger where you can append things like that, right?
Different pen, try different pen.
Thanks.
Lights up maybe? I'll put the lights up.
Okay, it's a ledger with 3 columns and a growing number of rows. This is Bitcoin, okay? You can't shout out that I'm wrong yet, because this is not supposed to be right. And in Bitcoin, the from and to columns have unique identifiers, which is your like account ID, but it's actually the hash of public key or something like that. And as everyone knows, this doesn't actually give you the kind of privacy you used to think. Just like, thanks. Just like people used to think that. This sounds good. This feels good to me. Yeah. People used to think that on the internet nobody knows you're a dog because your IPv4 address doesn't have your home address written into it, and that turns out not to be sufficient to prevent people from knowing you're a dog on the internet. Likewise, people used to think that since the Bitcoin addresses didn't have your true name in them, that Bitcoin was anonymous, but that's far from sufficient to prevent people from figuring out what you did. Okay, so what Zcash is that we are going to encrypt all 3 of the columns. So that's ciphertext. And we can do that with standard, well-understood, high-quality modern encryption so that we're pretty sure, given the current state of the art, nobody's going to be able to decrypt any of that decryption back later. But as soon as you do that, you have the problem that miners or validators can't discriminate against invalid transactions because they can't read them. So this is where the zero knowledge part comes in. A zero knowledge proof is this amazing cryptographic construction that shows. So that compares a zero knowledge proof, and you can look at it and quickly verify cryptographically that nobody could have come up with that particular cryptographic string unless they knew a secret key that controlled a from account, and that from account had enough money to send this much money to a to account, and it had not previously double spent it. But you don't learn anything else. You don't learn how much money, or which from account, or which to account. You just learn that somebody must have known a private key that controlled enough money. So it's valid, and that's all you learn, is that whether or not it's valid. Okay, I think that's pretty much the summary of what Zcash is. Now the really important detail, why would we do such a thing? Why does this exist? Because me and a whole bunch of other people think that privacy is really important, and it's a human right and it's necessary for the exercise of your political choices in our society. It's necessary for the sustenance and success and defense of our society. And we think it's really important to protect and expand the ability of people to freely interact and exercise their own unique moral choices. And also there's a lot of other reasons. As it turns out, privacy is required for business. So we get a lot of positive feedback from banks of all things and companies that want to use blockchains to transact. And they say, we can't be using a blockchain to transact if that leaks our transaction information to random foreign hackers and our commercial competitors and blah, blah, blah. That's a second reason that privacy is important, which is less important to me, but it's important to people who have money, so that's useful. And the third reason is fungibility, which is the property that any two $100 bills are worth the same as each other to you if you're selling your bike. Or it's a thing that's not fungible, like a used laptop. It might be worth 100, or it might be worth a little more or less. It quite depends on a lot of facts. And so I'm afraid that in the long run, Bitcoin and Ethereum as they currently exist may prove non-fungible. The pervasive, non-optional transparency of the Bitcoin and Ethereum ledgers sort of inevitably erodes fungibility because it's always tempting and easy for people to discriminate between one Ether and another Ether, or one Bitcoin and another Bitcoin, and say, oh, that one's worth like 90% as much as the other one. And as soon as it's anything other than 100%, at least most of the time, like, it might be okay if on very rare occasions, like you found out a $100 bill was counterfeit. Like, has that ever happened to anybody? I've never experienced counterfeit cash in the US in my life, but it could happen. And so that $100 bill would not be worth the same as everything else. But in my everyday transactions, I can definitely buy a used bike any day with a $100 bill. It totally works. It seems plausible to me that Bitcoin and Ethereum are headed for a case where fungibility usually doesn't work. Like almost all of the coins are worth different amounts from each other. I've seen this already in practice for years now, like people trying to sell freshly mined Bitcoins for a premium more than previously used Bitcoins. So I didn't buy, but the fact that they had that price shows that there is at least some non-fungibility already happening. Okay, so that's the basic summary. That's why we're doing it. The initial Genesis block is going to launch in 2 days. And why was I tweeting a whole bunch of hash characters recently? Is the first question. And now let me just pause and take a breath. There's a lot of different topics that we could talk about. So let me just take a quick survey. Like the weird hash characters is definitely an interesting topic. It has to do with the parameter generation ceremony for the zero knowledge proofs, which is very weird and complicated and a very interesting story. But is there any other things, like, is anybody totally lost and like, wait, what was the first part again? Or what do you think?
I was going to ask about mining, GPU mining.
Okay, let me start taking notes. Yes.
The reasoning behind why you chose to start off with investor capital instead of ICO.
That's a good one.
I think we repeat the question so that people.
Oh, okay. So the second question was mining and do you use a GPU? And the third question was why we chose to start off with investor money, investor capital instead of an ICO. Next, your question.
Briefly discuss the comparison of the privacy as it relates to Zcash versus Monero.
Basically, no, because I don't understand Monero well enough, but I could try a little bit. But are there any Monero people who can shout out if I say incorrect things? I'll try, if we get that far. Yes?
So how would you be able to monitor the supply of the overall currency?
That's a really great question. Monitor the supply. So the question was, this question was, can I briefly contrast the privacy of Zcash and Monero? And the next question was, how can you monitor the money supply, monitor the supply? Okay, yes?
What about like non-cash payloads with data like?
I love that question. Okay, the question was, what about non-cash payloads? And
Who's going to do the trusted setup process?
that's the same as this one. Public params. The public params are the thing to be produced from the trusted setup. Okay.
How are you going to find out if there's a password within the Zooko Equihash?
What about Equihash?
How are you going to find out if there's a password in Zooko?
Okay. How are we going to find out if there's a faster way to solve Equihash? Equihash is the proof of work function that we are using for proof of work. And the question was, how are we going to find out? That's an interesting question. Okay. Wow, this is great. I'm so glad you have so many questions. We might have to pick the best ones at this rate.
So you touched on the philosophy of like why you want privacy and that banks like it, but I'm curious, you find out this is being used for kidnappings or assassinations, like is that just the price you have to pay?
How do I feel about evil usage?
Evil usage, yeah, sure.
Is that a fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, maybe I should start trying to answer some, and maybe we can. Okay. You guys, there's like 4 more questions, and I haven't even answered any. 5. Oh my God. Yeah, we've got plenty of time. I'm going to keep going until people start leaving. All right. What's your question? Wait, you already asked your question, didn't you? Wait, you'll get a second one in the next minute. What's your question?
Can you explain how multi-sig will work?
Oh, okay, that's a really good question. The question was, how will multi-sig work?
This zero knowledge proof thing, I've heard this before, is incomprehensible. You make it comprehensible.
Explain zero knowledge. Definitely, I can. The question was, can you explain how zero knowledge proofs work? And the answer is definitely not. Because I don't understand, actually. No, I don't understand how zero knowledge proofs actually specifically work, but I rely on a whole bunch of cryptographers who claim that they do, and then other cryptographers like appear to be persuaded by the first cryptographers. So it's like much of what I consider my knowledge about the world is of that form. Vitalik. A strategy for dealing with what? Okay. How do we deal with data with data leakage, info leakage? So the question is, how do we deal with leakage of stuff besides the 3 fields that got encrypted, but other stuff like the timing? The timing is a big one. That's a good question. Vlad. How do you authenticate the Genesis block? That's a good question. Maybe some of the other Zcashers who are here could answer that one if we get that far. I don't know what order we're going to do this in. I think we're just going to take questions for a while until people start leaving. The next question is, will we ever be able to prune the transactions to reduce the size on disk? I need a bigger whiteboard. Yes.
I have a suggestion.
Okay, let's hear it.
And it's a comment, like if you group them by like likeness, and then just answer them in the group.
Okay.
Instead of,
All right.
right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, hold on. All right, I'm going to take 2 more questions, and I'm going to try to answer questions. And then we'll have even more questions. Sorry, there's already 2 people in line. Can you wait for a little while?
Porting BTC relay and long-term interoperability with Ethereum.
Porting BTC relay and long-term interoperability with Ethereum.
Governance.
Oh, the history of governance. In the beginning. Okay, now I'm going to take the suggestion of trying to organize these questions a little bit. Holy shit. Okay, well, I can't organize them. I'm just going to pick the one that jumps out at me, which is this part. This is the worst thing about Zcash, is that these zero knowledge proofs that I don't really understand exactly how they work. Well, I understand some of the old kinds of zero knowledge proofs that have been around for decades, but those ones produce proofs like this here string, which you can look at it and you can convince yourself cryptographically that nobody could have come up with that string unless they knew the secret key that controlled the stuff. Well, for like about 30 years, cryptographers have known how to produce zero knowledge proofs for arbitrary languages, but they all were way too inefficient, both in how much CPU, or in some combination of how much CPU it took to produce them, or how much CPU it took to verify them, or how big the proof strings were. So a typical proof string would be like tens of kilobytes in size. And so that's why nobody put anything like this into Bitcoin like 4 years ago or so. And then about 3 years ago, a bunch of cryptographers came up with some really efficient zero knowledge proofs called Snarks. And the S stands for succinct zero knowledge proofs. And I guess snark is some kind of silly backronym, because if you are snarky, you say things briefly or whatever. So yeah. Jack is a Zcasher, but he's not allowed to interrupt just to add true facts that I omitted. He's only allowed to interrupt to correct me when I say false facts. I should probably just throw one in to see if he's paying attention. So snarks are these recent, like 2013 or so, discovery in the crypto literature, which make zero knowledge proofs, which are very short. I think they're 288 bytes long. And nobody's jumping up to say I'm wrong, so they must be. And the problem, the trade-off, is that they rely on public keys, basically. They use some public key cryptography, elliptic curves, and they use pairings. If you know the corresponding private key that goes with the public key that they use, then you can form false proofs. So what they're really proving is that someone knew the the spending key that controls this money, and then that money was never previously spent, and blah blah blah. Or somebody knew the private key that goes with the public keys proof system. So that's really bad. So they're called the public parameters, but I also sometimes call them public keys. So what it boils down to is, if you know the corresponding private key, you can counterfeit Zcash out of thin air for yourself. And because Zcash has privacy, no one will notice. So years and years ago now, like 3 years ago, we started on this project, which is going to be ready in 2 days. And the first thing, basically, the first thing I did when I became the leader of this project was said, we can't just generate the public key and private key and then throw away the private key and then use the public key for the snarks, because that's not good enough, because we'll never know if someone stole a copy of the private key and we didn't know, or other people won't trust that we didn't keep a copy of the private key on purpose. But even I myself doing that might not 100% sure that someone didn't steal it without me noticing. So then we invented a secure multi-party computation protocol. I say we, this is those cryptographers that I rely on for doing this kind of stuff mostly. So we invented a protocol where there's multiple participants. In answer to someone's question, when are we going to do the trusted setup? We did it last weekend, and I haven't told anyone yet. So that's the DVDs, is one of the evidence trails from that. So I really wish you brought your DVD readers. Come on. But I didn't want to tell anyone to bring DVD readers, because that would have given away that I was bringing DVDs. But anyway, so we did this trusted setup. We got 6 people, and we had each of them generate a shard of the public key, which required them to use a shard of the private key. And we had this metaphor that if you got all 6 of the shards of the private key together, that would form this thing that allows counterfeiting. So we call that thing the toxic waste. And our metaphor is if you have a bunch of chemical byproducts in your factory, and each chemical individually is harmless, but if all 6 of the chemicals get mixed together in the same place, then they turn into this horrible toxic waste, which is difficult to manage safely. So our strategy was just, we keep the precursors separate from each other until they're destroyed. So the toxic waste never comes into existence at all. So we got 6 people and asked them each to do one of these 6 processes, and then to delete their shard of the toxic waste at the end. And it took all weekend, like 30 days straight. And this produced the public parameters, which allow efficient zero-knowledge proofs, which allow this kind of encryption in a blockchain where we can actually fit, a reasonable number of transactions into the blockchain. And I, having been there, am totally persuaded that nobody got even one of those shards of that private key. But I don't necessarily expect everyone else to believe that, who didn't get the opportunity to watch it up close. We do have a whole bunch of evidence that we're going to be publishing, like videos of the whole process happening. It was really amazing experience. I don't know if there's been a cryptographic ceremony as elaborate and fantastic ever, but it's still not good enough, no way, right? Because you could suspect that it was all a put on, right? No matter what the ceremony was, it could have been all a Potemkin front. And B, the toxic waste is not the only way to have counterfeiting. Like Bitcoin had a integer overflow bug, which allowed someone to create 180 billion Bitcoin at one time. About what, 4 or 5 years ago? Longer, 6 years ago? And the only reason we know that happened is because Bitcoin has no privacy, right? So if we had a bug like that in Zcash, which is entirely possible, there'd be no way to notice it and fix it. Right? So even if this ceremony, which I'm very satisfied with and is super awesome, was totally successful, and the toxic waste private key, nor even any one of the 6 shards of the toxic waste private key remains, we could still have counterfeiting, and any system that has privacy lacks a way to detect counterfeiting. So I intend to advocate for a hard forking upgrade of Zcash in the next year or so to add this question: how do you monitor the monetary supply? So I think we should have a protocol in which, on a periodic basis, like every month or every year or something, all the money gets accounted for. So if you control a private key, you have to reveal the amount of money. And if the specific amount is itself sensitive, you could split it up into multiple buckets and then reveal them separately or whatever. So there would be some privacy leakage from that, but it would probably not be very much. It would probably not link you to anything else unless you reveal the same amount that you had used for some other purpose. I guess that would be leakage. But as long as you just randomize or split up the amounts that you reveal, then everyone in the whole system can count how much Zcash is in circulation at this time. And that will either show that it's more than you're supposed to have, so we've had one of those value overflow bugs, or someone stole the toxic waste private key, or it will show that it's less, and if it's less, then you know nobody generated 180 billion for themselves and spent it. Okay, what's your question, Glenn?
And if you don't reveal, you like lose your coins in the hard fork?
If we get a community who's willing to use that protocol with me, then everyone in that community has to reveal periodically or their private key is invalidated. So, but it's not something the human has to do, it's something their wallet has to do for them. So it doesn't prevent you from holding long term, but it prevents you from holding in cold storage indefinitely. You have to allow your wallet to connect to the internet periodically to let your money be counted. Wait just a second.
So what if you find that someone did create a billion, whatever, what was it?
Well, that would depend on the details. In the Bitcoin case, it was quick to figure out where it came from and to do a retroactive hard fork and roll back that block.
There's a software.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay, fine. I'll take that one, but, okay, that was incorrect. But I don't care about the difference between hard forks and soft forks. But anyway, that's a different topic. So with Bitcoin, it was easy to detect and repair and resume. With Zcash, it may or may not be. It would probably be a lot more damaging if excess Zcash is ever discovered. Because probably by that time, it will have been circulating for a long time. We would always have the option of rolling back to a previous time, which would only be, there would be only a point if we knew that the failure had happened after that time and we knew how to fix the failure. But it would still be extremely painful to do any kind of rollback for very long. Anyway, I'm sorry, the question was, what do you do if you have a monetary base accounting scheme and it turns up excess Zcash? What was your question?
I was just going to point out that if you're really at close to the storage, like what they do, which is to publish it, to recreate transactions that like read that cycle you're doing there, and then like attach all of it to the expenses with
Vitalik said if you wanted to hold your private key in cold storage for a long time, you'd create a bunch of transactions that do what? Okay, create a bunch of transactions. Yeah. An incentive for what? For people to include them. Yeah, and you post-date them. It's like a bunch of post-dated checks. But that doesn't succeed at proving, yeah, okay, so actually I'm conflating two things because I want both of them. But some people might want only one of them, so I guess we should talk about that. I want both counterfeiting detection and the opportunity to garbage collect old state, which applies to this question. And I really want to know the size of the circulating active monetary base. So if people lose their keys, I would like for the public to find out about it a month or a year later so that we know how much shrinkage there's had from lost keys. And what else? There was a fourth reason that I really liked the garbage collection scheme, but I can't remember right now. Now, I guess it would be possible to do a thing that allowed indefinite cold storage and had an accounting of however much monetary base had been known to be generated. But it wouldn't have the garbage collection and the public accounting of the current active monetary base. Did someone else have a question over there? Yeah.
I was just gonna say, so if somebody opted out of like, let's say just out of stupidity or out of like sure to stay opted out of the hotel instead, what would happen to those coins?
So in that hard fork, if you use the cryptocurrency with that protocol, then if your private key doesn't prove to the public the amount of your currency that it currently controls within the time window, then it gets invalidated so that you can never spend that again. So it gets recycled.
Your money would be just like burned, proven and burned, and then time passes.
I was thinking it would get recycled to miners in the next cycle. It would be like reincarnated. But you wouldn't have it anymore, and yeah, that would happen if you didn't let your private key participate in the accounting scheme regularly. Hold on, someone else?
My question was, how difficult would it be to counterfeit the counterfeit problem? How difficult is it to do that?
How difficult would it be to counterfeit Zcash?
Yeah. You're saying that.
Well-
You're saying that you have to make sure that you check to make sure that it didn't happen. But if it's a low probability that it would ever
Okay.
happen, then it doesn't matter, right?
Well, yeah, my answer is I'm too paranoid to ever be satisfied with prevention solely and not have any detection, so that's why I really want this added thing. Even though we've already like knocked ourselves out on prevention, I guess other people need to start evaluating for themselves how difficult they think it would be, because I'm like biased. I think it's extremely difficult. I don't think we have any integer overflow bugs because we copied the current version of Bitcoin when we started. And we spent like more than $100,000, I think, on independent security auditors to look at the changes we did make. And they found a bunch of bugs, none of which would have allowed counterfeiting, I think. And I think it's very unlikely that Zcash will allow counterfeiting, but I still want detection anyway, because that's just me. Jack, Greg.
My point was just that you can still do infinite cold storage in transparent crystals. Because transparent crystals, you can already see the amount.
Oh, that's a really good point.
So you just don't have to worry about
Oh, yeah.
garbage detection.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, there's a fact about Zcash that I didn't mention here, which is that it still has a complete copy of the Bitcoin protocol that's still running. And there's a really good reason for that, because then you can use all the Bitcoin machinery, which includes multi-sig, which otherwise you can't do with the encrypted transactions. They only allow non-multi-sig, single sig. But you can post clear text transactions that anyone can view on the blockchain, just like with Bitcoin, and then you can use multi-sig. And as Jack points out, then you can put your private key in long-term storage. Hold on, I think John Light was in order.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment. You mentioned you were thinking about getting the Bitcoin or the Zcash that wasn't participating in the audit to the miners, and I was going to ask or suggest, does that create reverse incentives for the miners to not include the proof transaction for body
Oh, yeah.
in the box?
Yeah, it does. That's an interesting one, yeah. Okay, and we can move on, because this is really important, but we pretty much covered it.
You knocked down my multi-sig questions by saying basically it doesn't work for zero-knowledge proofs at all.
Currently, that's right. Now, we could invent a protocol upgrade that added multi-sig zero-knowledge proofs. Oh, I think it's just a protocol problem, because Snarks are really general purpose. It's really cool. They you can use them for anything you can imagine, and the only thing anyone's ever imagined so far is single signature transactions.
Well, we've reached the need for multi-sig in Bitcoin for compelling reasons.
Yeah, multi-sig is like the best feature in Bitcoin nowadays, and with the current version of Zcash, you can already get a great deal of the privacy by sort of sandwiching a private.
Well, we're not all using multi-sig just for privacy. We're using it because there's a lack of trust because of buyer and seller in all transactions.
Yeah, but my point was, if you do if you do some private transactions and then you do a multi-sig transaction that's visible in the clear to everyone on the blockchain, and then afterwards you do some more private transactions, that links your multi-sig public transaction to very little else, depending on a whole bunch of qualifiers.
I'm not entirely sure if that'll happen, but I think you should assume that we need multi-sig for real transactions.
Yeah, so maybe we should prioritize that as a high priority upgrade. Secure private multi-sig. Did you have something to say?
Yes. Are the Coinbase transactions encrypted or?
The questions are the Coinbase transactions encrypted or in the clear? They go to a transparent address, but there's a consensus rule that those ones have to go to a shielded address in the next hop. Was that Vitalik?
Yeah. I was just also ask, what is the simplest way to support multi-sig to natively support some kind of purpose from signatures?
I don't know.
Because how we could just manage the multi-sig on the signature without actually choosing one.
Oh, I don't understand that. It sounds plausible. And Vitalik's really smart. Disclosure, Vitalik is an advisor, a technical advisor to our company. So, I don't know if I can repeat the statement. The statement was, the simplest way to add multi-sig would be to support an elliptic curve that's friendly to Schnorr signatures. I don't really know why that would be true. Arthur is also a technical advisor to our company, so you should also be aware of that for disclosure.
Do you have any timeline in plan for getting a hash function with low complexity?
Well, the question is, to repeat the question, do we have any timeline or plan for developing a hash function with low multiplicative complexity, so something. But the context of that question would be creating private transactions is hella expensive in CPU time currently. That's why, right, Arthur? Yeah, so currently to create a private transaction, you can encrypt this with like cha-cha-20 in, like a microsecond or something. You can encrypt this, then you can encrypt this. Then you spend like 45 CPU seconds on your Intel 4-core supercomputer generating this part. And out of the 45 seconds, something on the order of 30 seconds of it is computing this giant Merkle tree with this expensiSH hash function, which is SHA-256, which is not expensive in real life or in like the regular old physical world, but it's super expensive in inside Snark prover world. So if we could have a secure hash function that was cheap inside Snark prover world, this would cut this time from like 45 seconds to 20 seconds or something, which would be great. And the question was, do we have a timeline or plan? No, we do not have a timeline, and we're not committed to anything, but we have a whole bunch of GitHub tickets and speculation and research going on. What were we talking about? That was not related to whatever we were previously talking about. And neither was that. Oh, that was, yeah.
One thing you just kind of mentioned casually is that the machinery of Bitcoin can power this. So how competitive do you think mining will be on day one? Okay, let's go there. What about mining? Do we use GPUs? How are we going to know if there is a faster way to compute Equihash? Okay, so we tried, so when we started this project, Bitcoin is a wonderful bolt from the blue. I used to work on cryptography and even digital currency cryptography in decentralized systems and things like that for basically my whole adult life. And we pretty much all thought that there was an ocean of impossibility out that way. Like I struggled for about 12 years to invent decentralized money, and I never could invent it, right? So I began to suspect there was no way to have decentralized money. And then Bitcoin appeared out there in the ocean, and it proved to be habitable. And ever since then, for 7 years or whatever,
people have been expanding in all directions, saying, how far does this go? Is this a continent? Is this a peninsula? Are there more? Is it an archipelago of possibility? And so when we started this project about 2.5, 3 years ago, we made a list of like 100 beautiful science breakthroughs, like involving, cryptography and satellites. And then we said, okay, now we better throw away like 99 of these and just stick to adding encrypted transactions and get that working, right? And then there was one other thing I couldn't help also doing, which was changing the mining function, because I was a little bit dissatisfied 3 years ago about how Bitcoin mining was centralizing. Although nowadays I've gotten kind of used to it. I don't really care that much anymore, but we replaced the mining function from SHA-256 hashing to Equihash, which is a memory-oriented proof of work. And it has kind of a pretty academic pedigree, which I don't know how much that's really worth, but it does have it. And it has very cheap verification. So the cost of, it has asymmetric, it's cheaper to verify than to produce, right? Like most other proofs of work, you generally, if you want to verify, then you ask what the nonce was, and then you do the same thing that the prover did, and then you see if you get the same answer. But with Equihash instead, there's an asymmetric thing where you can check that this is a valid answer more cheaply than to produce a new valid answer. And that's cool, potentially cool, because of like small clients on controlled devices and stuff like that, but also because of Ethereum. Because oh yeah, this is gonna tie into this too, BTC relay. Joseph Chow, who's sitting over there, wrote, are you Joseph Chow? Yeah, okay, I thought so. I was just gonna get more and more embarrassed if I didn't ask, so I did. Wrote BTC Relay, which is a Bitcoin light client running inside Ethereum. And because Equihash is cheap to verify, or theoretically, at least theoretically is cheap to verify, then you can do proof of work verification of the Zcash blockchain inside Ethereum. And so then you can have a decentralized, no central parties marketplace for exchanging Ether with Zcash. So mining has been changing rapidly for the last like 4 weeks because we wrote a CPU implementation in C++ of an Equihash miner, and it got something like 0.1 solutions per second. 0.02. Jack was the original author of this. And it's great, he did such a great job. And so it got about 0.02 solutions per second. So you had to leave it running for a long time to get even one attempt. And then about 4 weeks ago, a whole bunch of people got really worked up about Zcash mining because we had announced that this day was coming and we appeared to be serious. And so people started announcing on the Zcash forum, oh, I've written a miner that uses a GPU and I get 10 solutions per second. So it's like, what is that, 50 times, 50x? And then other people went out, so yeah, well, I've written a GPU miner and I'm getting 15 solutions per second. And so, so I didn't know what to do because we were way too busy trying to finish the thing and not introduce any of those bugs that allow 180 billion Zcash to be created. Launch it on time. I would really want to launch on time. It'd be one of the only times that a thing like this ever got launched on time. So what I did was announced that we'll award $10,000 prizes to whoever open sources the best mining implementation. So now we have, and then a whole bunch of other things happened involving crowdsourcing and cloud mining and a bunch of other stuff that I don't even know all of what's going on out there. But now there are a bunch of open source Equihash solvers for both CPUs and GPUs. And we did copy one of the better ones and add it into our reference client. So if you download the official software, like today or in 2 days, you get one of the fast CPU-oriented miners. Now wait, are there unanswered questions about, how are we gonna know if there's a faster? Well, okay, there's studies, there's, like asking people to study, to examine it. And in fact, we paid a consultant who's good at that kind of thing to examine it and see. The question somebody asked earlier was, how are you gonna know if there's a faster Equihash solver, an algorithm or something out there? So the main thing we've done is we've tried to benefit from the public scrutiny of the algorithm itself. We've learned a lot from how much faster people have been able to make it. Like they've been able to speed it up by 100x, basically, over what we thought was the optimum when we started. But that actually feels like to me not surprising, but it would feel really surprising if there was much more give in it. I think that's my whole answer. Hey, people are starting to leave. It's 8 o'clock. We've been doing this for 45 minutes. Are you coming back? Okay. Break time. Sure. This is the guy who, what's your name? Dimitri. Yeah, this is Dimitri asked the question, how are you going to know if there's a faster Equihash solver?
If it's a nice white hat cryptographer, finds there's no reduction from Equihash to a standard particle, right?
Yeah.
So if a nice white hat cryptographer finds a faster algorithm and publishes it, I guess the 10K price, right? But if a black hat one finds it, keeps it, something that's 100 times faster, keeps it himself in mildly just 100 times faster than anybody else,
yeah,
it's going to get a lot more money. So like, how would you, and you acknowledge that before, you said we need to spouse change the algorithm at that point. So my question was, how do you notice that?
Well, I don't know. Like, there's not any built-in way to notice something like that, right? You might be able to notice if their network behavior gives it away. The longer I say the more hands go up. Yeah, like they could, yeah, maybe, but then also if you were a black hat, you might be smart enough not to do that, and then if I was smart enough to know what you did do, then you might be smart enough to not do the thing that I was going to notice. Yes?
So you're going to be competing with Ethereum for miners, I think?
Well, Ethereum is trying to shed their miners, aren't they? I think that's probably a big part of why there's been so much energy in ZCash mining.
Until Ethereum changes to proof of stake.
Well, I don't know all the details, but my perception is that erstwhile Ethereum miners are awfully enthusiastic about mining Zcash. Yeah, in the meantime, you can switch back and forth dynamically according to current market conditions and stuff. True. You haven't asked any questions yet?
I did earlier.
Oh, but then you moved. Good trick. Does the current best GPU miner prefer AMD or NVIDIA? I don't remember. Does anyone else know? The current best GPU miner?
I believe it's AMD. It's what's but there's also someone's using the Xeon and got something like 100 switches to a CPU miner.
Right. Okay, so the answer, so the question was, does the current best GPU miner prefer to run on NVIDIA or AMD? The answer is probably AMD, but also be aware the CPU miner is surprisingly good. There was a moment like 4 weeks ago when there was this vast despair on the Zcash forum where people were saying, oh, this sucks so much because the GPU miners have the proprietary algorithms. And people were kind of assuming that GPUs would totally blow CPUs out of the water, such as happened with Bitcoin like 5 or 6 or whatever years ago. Wait, I'm not finished with my story. And I've been really pleased to find out that in the last like 2 weeks, well, it's actually because of the Zcash open source miner challenge where we offered $10,000 for the first prize for the best GPU miner, and $10,000 prize for the best CPU miner, and $10,000 for like other category. Well, somebody produced and committed in open source to GitHub and entered into the challenge a CPU miner that's written completely in assembly language and uses SIMD really well. And so now it looks like, disregarding the cost of the hardware, I haven't even seen the results about the power yet, but just disregarding the cost of the power and the cost of the hardware, typical high-end modern CPU is only like 1/2 as fast as a typical modern high-end GPU for Equihash mining. So that's interesting. Yes, sir.
Stan, if you are going to buy a practice part of AFT, that's time in your hand, like online theory, where you get it, or like,
There's a lot of discussion on the forum about it.
Yeah, we have a segregated channel. If you come to any of our forums and you want to talk about mining, go to the mining channel. Okay, so mining is a big deal. I really hope, let me say one more thing about it. I really hope a lot of people will do mining so that it'll be more decentralized. Even though I'm kind of okay with Bitcoin's mining situation, I'm kind of okay with Ethereum's mining situation, but I think it would be really awesome if people mined Zcash on like an ad hoc basis, because it's actually currently potentially maybe effective to use your otherwise idle high-end Intel chip for mining, like overnight. Maybe. But I hope people do it. If you, where can I find a picture of the mining status display? Jack, I want to see a picture of the red heart and the Zcash logo. Yeah, you come find it for me. So if you're hanging out in a room with a bunch of people with laptops, and you see an ASCII art red heart and golden Zcash coin on the screen, then that means they're running the reference client miner, and they're contributing to the distribution, the decentralizedness, and the strength of the mining network. Yeah, so look for that. Anybody who has that, not only are they contributing to the social good of a censorship-resistant global network that anyone can use, but that also means they're paying attention to the lecture instead of doing their email. So they are really cool.
I have a question not related to mining.
Okay.
If all this works out the way that you want it to, and I hope that it does, you're going to be ruffling some pretty big feathers, as you've seen with Apple and the FBI. Of course, the government.
Feathers?
The government can't shut down a decentralized network, but.
What does it mean to have big feathers? Oh, you're going to ruffle feathers. Okay, sorry.
My question is, what is your strategy for government relations and not getting yourself thrown in jail?
Okay, did you all get that question? What is my strategy for not getting thrown in jail? I don't know. So the question was predicated in the future. If it works out in certain ways, then certain people will be ruffled. I don't know so much about the future, but in the current, I mean, I'm not going to speculate. I honestly think, I remember 6 years ago, or 5 years ago, when everybody agreed that as soon as the government finds out about Bitcoin, they're going to destroy it, or try. Remember that? Do you remember anybody saying, no, actually, I think a lot of governments will be fine? What? Nathan's a Zcasher, so he's allowed to do that. All right, so I mean, I remember very clearly that era, and it turned out completely differently in the United States and Europe, or like UK, although it is kind of like that in Venezuela and Russia. So I'm not so sure about what will be the future of like the attitude. But in the current time frame, I do spend a lot of my time talking to people like that, like law enforcement and regulators and banks. With banks, I'm trying to sell them products to make money or to attract their interest or whatever. But we So far, I found it pretty easy to persuade people who have that kind of policy interest or their own particular interest that Zcash is a fundamental scientific breakthrough that has uncounted potential applications, and this is just the first application. And that one of those applications is data security in a blockchain, and that every use of blockchain for healthcare and IoT and whatever, insurance and trade finance and anything that anybody thinks they're going to use the blockchain for, they require data security to be added before they can actually start. And so as soon as you explain it to law enforcement or regulators in those terms, then this reframes it in their mind from, like being adversarial or hostile to being yet another sort of complicated, troublesome new technology with both good and bad consequences that they want to learn how to understand and manage as fast as they can. Okay, so that's my answer to your question. Okay, Jesus, I don't like evil things. Can I just go on the record that I disapprove of evil, and not to be, I shouldn't be dismissive. Evil is a real thing. I firmly believe that empowering people to communicate with people from other countries by inventing the internet 20, 30 years ago has allowed a lot more good than it added to the capacity for evil. But you have to admit, the internet gets used for evil all the time, right? I remember when the internet was new and there were these newspaper or magazine articles in Dead Tree magazines that themselves were not on the internet, about the internet. And everyone was all about, oh my God, this new thing, does it violate our laws and social norms? And I don't remember precisely when those articles stopped. It was like when the readers got to be of the age that they had the internet. It was like when the generation came along who knew the internet from childhood. At that point, it stopped being so scary. Anyway, so I sincerely don't like evil usage, but I sincerely believe that empowering people to collaborate and structure, organize themselves, and to share resources and to allocate resources, I think that enables a great deal more good than it enables evil. Vastly, exponentially more good. That's my answer to that. Vitalik?
So I have a slightly different organization on Zcash and privacy and evil. So basically what the argument is this. So right now we live in a world where you can take a picture of someone's face and there are just apps where you basically put a stick picture into the app and you can figure out exactly what identity of that person is. So I would argue that having extremely strong privacy on the internet should not be viewed as extreme, it should be viewed as a real compromise.
That's a really good argument. Yeah, another way to riff on the same thing is that until about 10 years ago, there was an effective, practical, and social norm of pervasive privacy in the good, successful, healthy societies, although not in East Germany. And that we're having an extreme and unprecedented experiment in eradicating all of that and then finding out what happens. I worry about that. Yes, Vlad?
As I said, I usually wouldn't try to make these responsibility arguments where good outweighs bad. It's actually a very difficult argument to make. From the point of view, you have to make predictions about the impact of technology on society.
Yeah.
Difficult in a chaotic, complex world.
Fine.
It's much better, much like overpowered to be an element of this is desperately needed to prevent really bad.
Okay.
If you ask me, Zcash is desperately needed because if we're going to move to a cashless society, then we better have, non-mediated anonymous cash or, anything happen.
Yeah. That's a good argument.
I would like to mention really quick, because we have lightning talks after.
Oh.
5 more minutes.
Okay, yeah, great. Sorry, I didn't even know. I thought we were going to go until people left.
I'm all for that, but I want to give some time for our lightning talks.
I feel both of those arguments really sincerely, that radical elimination of privacy from entire ginormous populations is dangerous, and also that facilitating people to cooperate without being barriered by like national borders is the greatest potential for improvement of the human condition all around. So both to avoid a bad outcome and because in my opinion, it promises a really, really great outcome. All right, so we have 45 seconds for each of the remaining things. We didn't do an ICO because SEC. Data leakage is a real problem. If someone's just looking at the blockchain, they get very little, just a bunch of encrypted stuff and the timestamp of which block it showed up in. Plus there's this metadata about the timestamp of which version of the blockchain you used to prove that your money was in there. So there's actually 2 timestamps, and that could be troublesome. You got to be careful, or we've got to be careful on your behalf. But if someone has other side channels, like they're sniffing your network connection, then of course they learn a whole bunch of other stuff. So you really ought to use Tor or I2P or some other technology. And that's one of those things that maybe we should prioritize along with multi-sig transactions and counterfeiting detection. But Tor and other kinds of stuff would be good. I like Monero because it's an open source thing. I've never heard any credible accusations of scam and secrets and junk about Monero. That guy Fluffy Pony was kind of a dick to me on Twitter, but I've never heard any accusation that he's a scammer, so that's good. I like it. It's an open source thing. The difference between the technologies is hard to summarize in 40 seconds. This excludes almost all the information that could possibly be excluded from the blockchain itself. We've been talking about what residual information there is. It's like a pair of timestamps, the timestamp of when you posted this, and the timestamp of what version of the blockchain you refer to prove that you had the money at that time. There might be some other little bits of data that leak into the blockchain, but very, very little. It's basically just a timestamp. It's so little. We've you've used cryptography to squeeze out almost all the information. Now, everything else, like Monero, I don't understand all the details or most of the details of Monero, but everything else is using weaker technologies to sort of obscure one thing with a set of other things. But that's that leaves a bunch of information. There's like a huge set of things that are not involved. I can't explain, but I think that's significant. So basically, my answer is that Monero is cool. And one advantage, so Monero has several advantages, one of which is that it's using more old-fashioned cryptography because the Snarks stuff was only like 3 years old, and we could be unpleasantly surprised by new scientific discoveries about it. Hey, I'm done with this one. I don't really know the answer to how you authenticate the Genesis block. Why don't you ask someone who knows after? Governance in 30 seconds. Well, we have this company that gets some of the coins, and we took money from investors instead of an ICO because SEC. And of those coins that the company gets, I just have to load this up. And then I'm just about done. The bottom line is we're going to set up a nonprofit in the long run that's probably going to be the source of ongoing evolution and protection and maintenance of the protocol on behalf of all users, because that's just more appropriate for a nonprofit that has a mandate to do that and can be fully transparent and non-conflicted. And then our company will probably go out of business or try to find other ways to make money or something. But that nonprofit, a bunch of the people who started this and got the Founders Reward coins, which come out over the next 4 years, they have donated 14% of their 10% to the foundation. So eventually, probably governance, or the natural sort of locus of where everyone looks will probably shift to that foundation. I hope, if we set it up and have credible leaders and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's a fully decentralized system that nobody can prevent you from using or tell you what version you have to use. So just like Ethereum and Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic and Monero and everything else, it has a kind of governance which is just the good old-fashioned open source fork you kind of governance. Now look, there's other people in line, so can we stop now and then you can ask me questions after if you want. That would be great. Okay, thank you all so much for listening and asking a ton of good questions.
Thank you, Zooko. And just real quick, 28th, is that the launch?
Yeah, October 28th.
Yeah, October 28th, they'll be launching. It looks like you solved the board. Yeah, you got them all. Excellent. So everyone who signed up for a lightning talk, so we got 7 people. If you can line up over here, and I'm going to call you out. You have 1 minute. If I can ask everyone to kind of be respectful, just a few more minutes, we'll be done real fast, and then we can get back to Meetwood. So first off, if I can go ahead and introduce Justin Hall from DG717. And again, we're just doing a few more talks. People can kind of stay in your seats a little bit longer.
Thank you so much. You know, this talk with Zooko was the second of one of these Bitcoin social talks I went to. The first one was Andreas, and it's this wild feeling that you're in the room with the people that are kind of making the history of the internet. I'm 41 years old. I may not look it. It's because I like weed better than alcohol. Yeah, let me hear it. But I think this is about my 3rd internet revolution. I was in these halls in 1994, but they weren't halls. So my name's Justin Hall, and I'm here because I'm helping host an event on Bitcoin and blockchain. It's called the Social Impact of Blockchain. It's happening a week from Friday at a place called DG717, and some people in the back there are even giving talks. People from Lightning, people from Blockstream, people from Blockstack Labs, people from Hyperledger. We've got some really good folks, and you, I hope, might want to come. And in your inbox, if you are a member of this esteemed meetup, our friends have sent you a discount code. It says SF Bitcoin Social. It is, you know what? So I said, we gotta provide lunch to people. People, if they come to an all-day conference and they're feeding their brains on this stuff, they gotta eat. I don't wanna give away free tickets because I don't want 80 people to say, I'll take a ticket, and then 10 show up. So the coupon is for $12. For $12, you get a full day, you get some coffee, some cookies, some lunch, and like an ass load of great speakers. So please consider going to the Nuked Context Conference, Social Impact of Blockchain, 4 November, Friday. SF Bitcoin Social is a discount code for you. Use the camel caps. Thank you.
Thank you. John White?
Great, thanks for the talk, Zooko. Really interesting, looking forward to the launch. My name is John Light. I'm a co-founder of a project called BitSeed, and we kind of do 2 things. One, we build and sell physical hardware Bitcoin nodes. So if you don't want a Bitcoin node kind of taking up a bunch of space and other kinds of resources on your laptop or desktop computer, we sell these little servers that you can plug in to run a Bitcoin full node. And 2, we're developing open source a web interface so that you can easily control your Bitcoin nodes. So if the command line scares you, you can use the nice friendly web user interface. And if anybody wants to help us actually develop this web interface, we are accepting open source contributors. You can check out the website at bitseed.org, and the GitHub for the open source code is github.com/bitseed.org. Thank you.
My name is Aaron Cole, and I operate a bar up at Bush and Taylor. It's called Stooky's Club Modern, and we're the only bar in San Francisco that accepts Bitcoin. We do have mixers there once in a while, so keep an eye out for that. And also, I'm thinking about taking ZCash, so good stuff. We are at Bush and Taylor, so 2 blocks down from the Grace Cathedral, and we're also available for buyouts and parties and other things. So look for me. Thank you.
We have Byron Gibson here.
Hello, Byron Gibson. I've been working in blockchain and Bitcoin for the past couple of years, and one of my projects right now is I'm helping Stanford University organize a conference specifically on security engineering at the protocol level. So the conference is called Blockchain Protocol Analysis and Security Engineering. It's scheduled for January 26th and 27th. This is the website. I'll add the link to the meetup.com page. And the idea behind the conference is that for the past several years, ever since blockchain came out, there's been a lot of deep thinking, research, work, and experimentation on security issues and how reliable are these infrastructure systems that we're building these days. And the conference, we're creating a conference specifically designed to look at the work going on in that area. More information will be on the Meetup page. Everyone here, if you're working on blockchain protocols or security engineering, security analysis, come check it out.
Hi guys, I'm James Prestwich, co-founder and COO of Storage Labs, but that's not what I'm here to talk to you today. I'm here to talk about ethical software. Software these days is always a relationship between users. There's no single-party applications anymore. These relationships define and encode power structures in the structure of the software itself. We can look at those relationships and determine whether a piece of software is itself ethical, whether it allows people to have positive interactions with each other or to exploit the power of the software for gain. Making platforms for free and private trade is ethical. Making platforms that exploit your social graph and hand your information to the NSA is not. It doesn't matter what the developers intended, it matters what the software does. So I want to have a conversation with anyone who's interested about software and normative ethics. Bring in all the philosophy talk. Thanks.
We just got 2 more of these.
Hello, everyone. The founder of Gamerholic, the first ever cryptocurrency specifically for gaming. Today, shout out to 56, just like Bitcoin. You can mine with a Bitcoin miner. We're doing some really, really cool things. We don't claim to be better than Bitcoin. We don't claim to be better than Ethereum. It's really just a fun cryptocurrency for gaming. I believe gaming is the best way to educate the masses on cryptocurrency. I'm from Sierra Leone, West Africa. The sharing economy, it doesn't matter if it's Uber, Airbnb, it's not there. They all have mobile phones. Young people play video games. With an education game, you can actually put income in the hands of young people in many parts of the world. That's the reason why I launched Gamerholic. Thanks.
And then for our last speaker. Arthur?
Hey everyone, if you think that ZCash is very cool like I do, it means you like innovation in blockchain protocols. And I'm working on a project, I've been working for 2 years on it called Tezos, which is about governance. Primarily, it's about a blockchain that can instantiate new innovation in a decentralized manner. So if you're interested in hearing about it, you can go to tezos.com, www.tezos.com. Thank you. Yeah, there's a meetup on November 6th in Santa Clara if you're willing to go down to the South Bay. Yes, Hacker Dojo.
Thank you. And here's the event is over. Surprisingly, we still have beer. I think there's a bottle of wine that hasn't opened up yet. So please feel free to mingle, keep talking. Something to know is we will be out of here at 9 o'clock. That means everyone out the door at 9 o'clock. So start mingling, but keep that back in mind. Thank you so much for coming out. Let's get one last round of applause for our speakers.